Hello, everyone. I am Timmy, Shen. I'm the Asia reporter with The Block. So for this session today, we're going to explore key aspects of Web3 infrastructure. Hopefully, we can break down some details and really provide some actionable insights for the audience here. So let me introduce my panelists. First, we have Matthew Liu from Origin Protocol. We also have Jun Liu from Sora Ventures, and then Sayan from Silent Protocol, and Anthony from Sera Fund. Okay. So let's give them a round of applause first. Thank you. We only have 40 minutes together, so let's just jump right into it. My first question for Matt. So could you just share with us the current states of Web3 infrastructure? In your words, what is Web3 infrastructure?
Sure. So what I will say is Web3 infrastructure is in this constantly growing state, which I love. But it's also really important to remember that it's still quite early. Oftentimes, as folks here, we think about internet, Web 2 as being this very, very mature technology, but we forget that Tim Berners-Lee actually invented the World Wide Web in 1989. Right? That's when he first started talking about it, and then it took a number of years for the relevant infrastructure for the first wave of the internet, whether that's TCP, IP, or email, SMTP type stuff, or whatever it is, to have these protocols, and then also the technology surrounding it to bring about the full internet, right?
Could you bring your mic more?
Yeah, sure. Networking, data centers, et cetera, right? So all this stuff had to happen the past 30-something, 40 years to bring the internet to where it is today. Web3 infrastructure has been going on for about 15 years now. Layer 1 chains, we're now seeing Layer 2 chains. We're seeing DeFi applications across chains. We're seeing new primitives like ordinals or primitives like NFTs. We're seeing wallets, both custodial and non-custodial. But across the entire stack, this is still, I would say, in the very early innings. We're still in the phase where everyone here is pretty early. We're early adopters. We're technologists. We're curious. Perhaps some of us are motivated by the financial incentives that this infrastructure helps create, but we're still very, very far away from where we want to be 10 years from now, where the entire global internet is connected on-chain, right? And we have permissionless ways for people to do banking. We have ways for people to transact real-world assets on-chain, tokenized securities, whether they're synths or they're actually fully backed. We have better wallets with better security patterns. We all saw what happened with Ledger yesterday, which was one of the scariest things I've really heard of in the past week, right? And so there's just a lot more to be built on all layers of the stack, making sure the layer 1s maintain their security, making sure layer 2s, while they're very scalable, become more decentralized over time and not so centralized, making sure dApps are secure and usable, improving the user experiences, wallets, all that. And so I'm very, very bullish on Web3, but I also believe that we also have just a ton of work to do still.
Yeah, we still have a lot to build in the Web3 industry. Sayan, can I get your take on what the current states of Web3 infrastructure is?
Yeah, so basically if you think as application developers right now, and if you think of building application or consumer applications, first of all, we have to know that applications are consumers of data. And we need infrastructure that allows us to fetch external applications like data. We need infrastructure that will help us work on this data. For example, like for the graph, for example, that will help us paginate all these random applications, all this random data into our applications. We need ways to essentially put this data on a decentralized network and also be able to operate on them. That is where this new project called Tableland came into play, where they're building on SQL to kind of allow users or developers to basically put the data over there and in order to work on it. So we need these different toolings so that we could build better consumer applications. We need, for example, so to kind of to summarize, we need ways to fetch data, we need ways to modify this data, and we need ways to basically put the data in front of the users in the correct manner. In terms of building out these applications in general, projects like DCloud, the movement of DCloud, decentralized cloud, for example, where we have Akash, where we also have uh, Aleph, for example, where we are trying to put all the all the backend infrastructure of an application into the open web, so that we could go into this vision of like zero trust architectures in general while creating out these decentralized applications. So that's also, I think, gets a little bit importance, where we'll have to focus on kind of like how we can not just decentralize the data part of the solution, but where we can also decentralize the hosting and serving part of the stack as well. Finally, I would say it's important to make access decentralized, and again go towards that vision of zero trust architecture as well, where we could uh, decentralize the RPC. Pocket network comes into our mind over here, where we could basically decentralize the RPC, provide them a better way to kind of like interface with Web3 applications. We could also, I would plug in what we are doing as well right now into this question. We would also need to make sure that users are secure while they're able to access these Web3 applications as well. That's what we are doing at Sayan. We are basically making people's interaction with Web3 secure. And that's, I guess, is also my vision of how to kind of like go from like, that's a full spectrum of like scale that we need to work on, that we need to build on. But I think there's a lot of things to do, like Matthew said. And yeah, that's I would say that's my vision.
That's a lot of work. It kind of stressed me out a little bit if if I'm you guys. So Anthony, what's your take on the current states of Web3?
Yeah, no, I think in general we've come so far in terms of like the technological advancements in Web3. You know, going from DeFi summer in 2020 to essentially Ethereum moving from proof of work to proof of stake. But I think ultimately there's still a lot of issues that we're addressing. I think obviously the biggest challenges were scalability and interoperability. I think from a scalability standpoint, obviously with L2s, that's been huge for us. ZK, optimistic rollups. From a interoperability, I think that's still very convoluted and complex today, and I think that's one of the sticking points, or like the friction areas. But I think when we look at where how we're gonna drive adoption in Web3, I think there's just two things that still kind of alarm me. And when you think about the blockchain trilemma, scalability, security, and effectively decentralization, I think security is still top of mind. Like, I think what is stopping or preventing us as a user to use Web3 applications or put my assets or my net worth on chain is this constant fear of hacks. And we saw that as Matthew mentioned with Ledger. I think these days you're seeing a lot of new projects like Blast launch L2s and amass almost $1 billion in TVL over in 2 weeks' time. But I think it's controlled by one multi-sig, and I think we've come so far as an industry, and I think it's really great that the market's picking back up. But all it really does take is one black swan event to set us back years again. So I think for us to really get further along the adoption curve, it's going to take some more security measures.
Matt, you want to add something?
Oh yeah, I was just gonna say it's kind of hilarious, right? Because this $1 billion of TVL is secured by a multi-sig. The actual L2 has not been built, and there isn't a clear timeline on it. But I think that speaks to some really interesting tensions, right? Because everyone wants to be part of the new chain and also get the financial incentives there. And so crypto economic incentives is actually one of the most powerful ways of getting users and developers interested. However, sometimes they actually go against proper infrastructure development, security protocols, and things like that, right? And it's actually funny enough, like at Origin, we actually work on a LST yield aggregator, OETH, and the idea is that token can actually earn at a much higher rate than things like STETH or FraxETH, et cetera, because we use them as underlying assets and then earn yield on top of that, right? And so we were actually talking internally in the last couple months on how do we actually make OETH a very ideal instrument for rehypothecation, where you can use it across bridges and L2s and AMMs, where this idle capital can be used to earn additional yield. But you have to do it in a very, very safe and secure way, right? And so we're working on this new primitive of how do you generate yield, rehypothecate that capital, but almost as like an infrastructure B2B product as opposed to just, hey, we're giving this to end consumers that can earn more yield. But the actual work to do something like that is insanely hard, right? And so I think we're at a point where a lot of different companies working on infrastructure, they realize that there's a lot of upside. A lot of companies working on new DeFi primitives and protocols realize there's a lot of upside. But security is also very, very paramount, right? Like you were saying, any black swan event, let's say blast goes down, or let's say there's another exploit in wormhole or layer 0, and we set ourselves back, right? We set ourselves back a year or two with the FTX thing, with Luna. So we have to be very thoughtful and figure out how to walk on the edge of constant innovation, move fast enough, but not make the sacrifices that can take down the entire industry with us.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. Security is very important to a point where at the block, for a media publication, when we hire people, we ask them, what do you think about those hack events in the industry, and how would you write about it? We use that as one of the examples and one of the writing samples for them to test our new recruits. So for June, I'd like to know what you think about it.
So yeah, I totally agree what Matt, Sayan, and Anthony said. But I think it's still we are already solved a lot of issues and a lot of things in the space, but we are still facing a lot more new problems coming out. Like Anthony said, like interoperability, composability, security, right? We still see so many exploits every day, and we also see that the infrastructure is not mature enough. There are so many L2s, right? But they are still encounter different kinds of issues. Like data availability issue is still there, but still a lot of people ignore this problem. So we're still a long way to go. But for infra, as the topics around infra, I think infra is a really broad word. But I would like to approach it in different aspects. Probably a lot of people will think infrastructure is okay, layer 1 or layer 2, everything can just deploy the apps, the dApps on. But I think, the definition of infrastructure should be a thing that other things could build on top of. So yes, of course, L1 and L2 is falls under this category. But there are other things could also falls under the infra things. For example, SDK, some adapter, coprocessor, sequencer. There are a lot of different things, or even security tooling stuff, or task suites. We are still a lot of different things under this category, and it's still underexplored. So I'm very bullish on the infrastructure thing because I hold engineering background. So when I first write the smart contract, it was back in 2017, 2018. We didn't have any toolings back then, and it's very hard to develop things on top of it. But recently we have so many other things we have Foundry, we have Brownie, we have different task suites, and then we have better toolings, and actually it helps and improves the security of developing smart contract. And we also we are lacking of other infrastructure like privacy or cryptographic toolings or infrastructure for now. So I think we're still a long way to go, and I still see many projects approaching this problem and then trying to solve it with different mechanisms and different algorithms. So I'm really bullish on it.
Yeah, panelists, please feel free to chime in if you want to. Okay, just raise your hand, and I'll let you talk. So now we identify the issues or problems in building those infra for Web3. So what can we do to solve these issues? What can you do to more actively contribute to improving the overall environment infrastructure? Sayan or do you want to take?
I guess we'll have to stick to some basic principles that we need to build permissionless, decentralized, trustless systems. It can be in any form. We could obviously go to this stage or reach this stage over time, but that should be the vision. Obviously, I wouldn't like again lay on top of what everyone is saying on with regards to blast and everything, but that is something that is not the correct way to approach or the correct signal to give to the community, for example. We need to, as an industry, because we're moving towards this movement of financial freedom, which is Bitcoin basically, we cannot kind of like go over or look over the concept of security, which is at its core. So I guess improving an infrastructure overall in Web3 can happen in many ways. We're obviously doing our part, but at its core, I guess that is something that we have to follow always.
An example from your daily operation, do you encounter any difficulties in how you actually address that?
Okay, at Silent, we're building a secure, like an interchain solution. Right now, we are allowing users to kind of like store their assets privately. We'll be allowing users to, we're going live very soon. We'll be allowing users to store their assets privately, interact with applications such as Origin, use assets such as OETH and stuff in a privacy-preserving manner, interact with all different applications in a secure way. So that's our vision. We want to make sure you don't get scammed, like you don't get targeted. For example, there's this Mark Cuban or something got phished because everything was online. Everyone can, he's on a spreadsheet, his address on a spreadsheet. There are projects out there that I keep saying that are basically selling users' data. They're putting together his user like real world identity and their like off-chain, like on-chain identity. They're actually selling this data to other operators so that we could advertise to them. That's so bad, so wrong. And maybe it's good for some people, some businesses perspective. Obviously, I'll respect everyone, but that's not something that we should be heading towards. Satoshi started this movement as a nonce, and I guess we need to also follow suit a little bit on that. So what we are offering is essentially we are allowing users to protect themselves, secure themselves while they kind of like operate in Web3. Obviously, we are doing many things in a compliant manner. We are improving multiple UI UX. I wouldn't obviously bore in this panel with the things that we're doing, but that's basically our approach to it.
Max?
Yeah, I'll just add that like it is kind of creepy, right? Like MetaMask, like sending all your information out there. Oh, they're gonna keep it private, but who the hell knows, right? And so I think there's a lot that we need to watch out for in terms of allowing users to opt into their preferences and also being educated, right? In Web 2, we saw a lot of this abuse where you sign up for an app, Facebook pulls all your data, it like kind of makes it really sneaky, it sends messages to all your friends to get them signed up, right? And they're like great growth tactics, right? But that's kind of a very Web 2 way. In Web 3, we want to preserve user privacy, user sovereignty.
Your mic.
Oh, user sovereignty, like the user should have the option as to where do they want to hold their money, how do they want to spend their money, which smart contracts do they want to transact with, who should see the information that they have, and we need to figure out a way to kind of like abstract this all away so that in some cases, yes, it does make sense for me to, let's say AML and KYC to Coinbase because Coinbase is an off-ramp to the US bank, right? But let's not have government interference and regulation around DeFi rails, right? A lot of the regulatory stuff around, oh, we want that information too, I think is like completely fucked up, right? And so at the end of the day, I think we as a developer community need to build the right products that allow users to have full understanding of what they're doing and then to opt into the different options before them.
But how would you convince those companies not to do that? Like, don't collect user data.
Make them unable, like don't let them be able to do so. Build such infrastructures and product that they won't be able to do so. 'Cause like ZK comes into mind over here.
Interesting. Anthony, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, so I would like to approach this question from a different perspective. So like, because like improving infrastructure can be many ways. So like, for example, like what Sayan and Matt, they provide the opinions is basically from the DeFi or from the privacy side. But like, I'm thinking about like, we can also trying to have more like better education to this, to the users and to the public. I think most of the exploit or most of the things that we see right now is that they are not well educated about Web3 knowledge. But we didn't see that many like good resource, or if I'm a novice, let's say, okay, I want to type it like, or your grandma want to use it, right? You have to tell her like one step by one step, or even yourself didn't know like, okay, what's the best way to tell her or show her like what's the best way to interact with the different dApps, or how did you secure your wallet, and what's the like underlying knowledge behind it. So that's why I'm also looking into like AA or other like user experience things in the space, because like it actually reduced the gap from novice to the Web3 world, so that they will all think that the crypto spaces are all like scammy projects or like sketchy things. They were more willing to start using it. And if we like bring more user into the space, it actually brings more like liquidity that can actually like better facilitate the procedure of bringing more dApps. So it's like a supply and demand. So then we will have more developers into the space to provide different kinds of service to these like new users. And then, yeah, and for so yeah, and then like DeFi, it's also like something not like novice wouldn't touch in, because they're more they're easy to understand what NFT is, what gaming is, but usually they are not understanding about what DeFi is, because like it's a very complicated things to them, because like when they use like bank apps or any other fintech apps, they could easily like contact the customer service or any others relationship manager kind of stuff would tell them that how to use it. So we're still lacking about like a infrastructure from this perspective. So yeah, so it's I think it's a new thing. It's a different ways to think about infrastructure.
Matt?
Yeah, do you mind if I jump in real here? Everything
sure.
you said like vibes totally with how I've been thinking about this problem a lot. Sorry if this answer is a little bit long-winded, but I've always been a big fan of the BJ Fogg behavior model. And this model is, a lot of product people think about this, but it basically says that like there's on one side of the graph, right, how motivated is the user to take an action, right? And on the x-axis, it's like how hard is this task to take, right? And so in Web 2, oftentimes what happens is the user interactions are really, really easy. People understand them, but the motivation is low because you're like, what am I actually using this for, right? In Web 3, one really interesting distinction is a lot of the tasks right now are quite hard to do, right? If you're trying to like yield farm, it's like, well, I gotta like run my own spreadsheet or write my own bots. I'm afraid, again, I might get liquidated, so I'm like actually writing code to manage this stuff. But the motivation can be really high because you can make a lot of money. And so
Your mic.
Oh, sorry. So not the mic thing. Okay. And so basically, like, in order to get users to use your application and stick with your application, you basically want to either increase the motivation that they want to use it, or you want to lower the user friction and make it easier to do. And so there's this kind of curve you guys can check up online. And so that's one of the big things that we at Origin, I think a lot of other projects need to figure out, which is how do you give people a really simple, easy way to use DeFi, or a really simple way to trade NFTs, where they still have the very same motivation, right? They're making money, but the amount of effort required is much, much lower, right? And so that's why our products, OETH and OUSD, the idea is you buy this token, you don't have to think about it, the underlying smart contracts through the asset allocation, the ways to earn the extra alpha, and then we can return 6% on your ETH versus 3.8% for SCETH or whatever, but you don't have to think about it. It's like brain dead simple. And so we're working on products now these days at the user experience layer where it's like, let's just simplify. Let's make it easier. The motivation still needs to be there, but the ability and the user requirement for someone to say, hey, I'm going to get a non-consolidated wallet, I'm going to mint some OETH or buy OETH is a lot simpler than I'm going to get a non-consolidated wallet, I'm going to learn how to yield farm, I'm going to do cross-chain swaps, cross-chain yield farming, oh, I got to do a lot of math to analyze, are my rewards tokens worth it, how much impermanent loss am I experiencing, oh, at the end of the day, I did all this work, and I'm not making money. There's this really, really interesting stat, actually, my co-founder Josh found last week, which is something like 90% of wallets on Curve, which is like the second largest AMM, where there's a bunch of really sophisticated people providing liquidity and trying to earn in DeFi there, 90% of the wallets are underwater. And so even for the advanced people, this is a very, very challenging thing. And so we have to be able to simplify these experiences on the application level keep the value proposition very high, and give great users a great experience, especially all these new mainstream users that we're talking about the next 3, 4, 5 years. If we want to bring hundreds of millions or billions of people into this Web3 internet versus the Web2 internet, we've got to do a lot of work to improve the user experiences, as well as the underlying infrastructure to make that possible.
Anthony?
Yeah, I think just following on Matt's point, like I think yeah, user experience is probably the biggest bottleneck right now. Just kind of simplifying the overall process, like even as just a basic user, right? You have seed phrases are such a pain. You have like 10 different wallets, one for MetaMask, a Phantom for Solana, a Kepler for Cosmos, a Pontum for Aptos. It gets really confusing. So I think the wallet infrastructure, that's being the basic foundation of Web3 adoption. It needs to improve there. Also, I do think for us as a fund, one of our theses is like gaming for sure is another big driver. You have 3 billion gamers worldwide, 3 million crypto gamers. Well, how do you bridge that, right? That the remaining, population. Well, it's essentially just making, the in-game assets like wallet experience much simpler, abstracting all that complexity away. And I think we're making strides there, but I think but time will tell, and I think we're making progress.
Sayan.
Yeah, Krish Ghosh from Anoma, like in 2020, started this topic of like intent-based infrastructures. Like he was pushing it, I guess, around in 2020, which is, I think, will make a lot of sense if we can like generalize all over the spectrum in Ethereum itself. Like if the end goal is to build consumer-facing application, we really need to not only make applications that are sturdy in nature, like that can do, like I began, anything with the data that it can hash, but also allows the users to have a very seamless interaction with it. We at Silent, not only we are building like this privacy-preserving infrastructure, but we are also actually creating an intent-centric design that is attaching or unifying all the different chains all together. So we expect that users wouldn't need to have all these like different wallets, for example, Quantum and Aptos, and random wallets and random chains, but rather one single address that can unify all these different operations for Ethereum, for a user, where liquidity could just seamlessly flow all across different domains, and we could unify all of them together. Not only we could provide security, but would actually enhance the user experience. We would enhance, like if we could make applications intent-centric, we would also be able to not just build products smart contracts, but also make domain-wide services that anyone could interact with. So this is what we need to focus on. So a random consumer application could use a function in origin and just plug it over there if it's an intent-centric model. And if you could build this correct pattern over there, everything would just unify all together. This is what we need to gun for. And that's what we probably need to head towards.
Love what you said there, and sorry if I'm dominating and saying a lot, but I do think intents and RFQ type stuff is the future. For those in the audience that may not know exactly what this means, just think about how you might be swapping today, right? Or sorry, let's assume you were in DeFi summer and you were swapping in 2020. You're probably going directly to Uniswap and you're buying some tokens there, or you're going to Curve, right? And you as a user need to be sophisticated enough to know, oh, which DEX is the one that I want to trade on, which has better slippage, et cetera, et cetera. And then soon came 1inch, right? So as a DEX aggregator. Well, hey, we're going to figure out what trade you want to do, and then we're going to route that on-chain to the best DEX to get you the best prices, right? And then now there's a layer on top of this, right, where we have the meta DEX aggregators and a bunch of different companies working on intents. And the idea here is the user can just say, hey, I want to buy 10 Ethereum using my mainnet USDC, but I want that Ethereum to show up on Arbitrum because I want to do something there, right? And they don't have to go through the 15 different steps of okay, let me bridge my Ethereum to Arbitrum, then go to Arbitrum, find the right AMM there. Okay, what's the best swap price? Okay, let me get that. Okay, damn, I lost all the fees along the way. And the idea of intents is you can actually put out this RFQ essentially, right? A request for a quote. And then there's more sophisticated players that are living on top of these meta aggregator layers, and they're well, okay, well, we'll give you we'll give you a bid in terms of how many tokens we'll give back to you, right? And there's a lot of these different projects that are doing it in slightly different ways. Some of them work with, I guess, like off-chain market makers. Others are trying to figure out how to pair multiple trades at the same time. In any case, the idea is return what the user wants with way less work and hide all the complexity under the hood. And if we can get that with intents, whether that's with just trading fungible tokens, but also in the future, maybe it's like NFTs or perps or whatever, then I think we're going to end up in a place where we have a much more efficient, decentralized, and permissionless financial market that can actually rival TradFi, right? Right now, it's still too complicated. It's individual traders that have to figure out exactly what chains to use, which AMMs to use, and so we want, as an industry, really want to fix that. And so once this intense thing that we're both talking about really matures, I think the amount of capital inflow into crypto is probably going to go up by like a 10x, 50x, and what people are getting back out is way better, right? They're getting better prices, they're getting faster trades, there's no like MEV type stuff that people are losing on, and everything is just gonna be a lot more cleaner and a lot efficient, and so that's a future that I really believe in and am bullish on, and I'm happy to see like folks here working on intense infrastructure.
Yeah, those are really good points I'm hearing here. So when I talk to, say, like NFT projects, like they're trying to sell their NFTs to even Web0 people, so like grannies who don't even use Web2, right? So all of these is very nice. So I have one more question for anticipated trends. So like looking ahead, what do you believe will be the biggest trend in Web3 infra from your perspective? Maybe Anthony can take first.
Yeah, and I think one thing we're excited about is the tokenization of RWAs. I do think reports have shown that this could be a $10 trillion asset class by 2030, and it is another very solid use case for blockchain tech. So I think that's one. I mean, tokenization enables a lot of benefits, like fractionalization of assets, added layers of liquidity, transparency. So and understand that a lot of the infrastructure being built today is kind of catered toward more of the institutional kind of target audience. I know Base, for instance, they want to be the KYC compliant L2. I think it's a great move where they can kind of target to this audience, this institutional audience, and capture that market share and the market opportunity.
Sayan?
Yeah, I would say security is going to be something that is going to become more valued. Like as people start coming and living on chain, they're going to realize that that is something that is of the most utmost importance for us. So any spectrum of products that are trying to enhance the security level that the user kind of like goes through is something that I believe is going to have more value as well. I would also add that the world is going to move towards this interchain infrastructure. So any project, anything that is going to, project will come out that are going to try to unify the experience for users so that we could build that consumer-facing application. That is one of the thing in Base as well. So they are very focused on like getting consumer applications, not some Ponzi's, so legit consumer applications. So that's, I guess, we're going to build infrastructure for it from a liquidity standpoint, from an access standpoint. So these are like probably my main two, I would say, my stones.
Thanks. Jun?
Yeah, I would say OpenFi. I use OpenFi because it's a more infra-oriented terms instead of like DeFi, which is a little bit, in my opinion, it's a little bit like consumer-oriented term. So for OpenFi, I would define it as the essence of the interoperability and the composability of the 5 feature native on blockchain and the whole crypto space. Because like the human beings, the whole community, like things, yeah, it's all built on top of the economy. So the 5 feature is basically the essence, which is different from Web 2. Which is different from Web 2. And in my opinion, Web 3 is not rival with Web 2. We're not like going to fight with them. We're not going to replace them. We are trying to work with each other because Web2 and Web3 are actually solving, trying to solving the issues for human beings. They're trying to solve things with different trade-offs. So in Web3, the native things on Phi is very important, and then the efficiency of the value transfer is totally different from Web2. So from the standpoint, so I think OpenFi it would be something in the future, and then there will be so many other features put on top of the OpenFi things. For example, like the private things, because currently it's all transparent on chain. That's why institution or any other big market makers cannot get into it, because it's all transparent. They don't want to be seeing every behaviors are seen by everyone, right? So that's why they couldn't do market makings, or they could then do some specific behaviors, and they still have to go to dark pools or any other things, and then it's still under the hood. So OpenFi is one thing, and then tapping into the privacy things like the hidden stuff. I don't want to be transparent, but it can also relates to the regulation that we recently faced, because by cryptography and the newly invented algorithms, we can still prove that we are not doing malicious things. But at the same time, we can still make sure that we are private. We can have a global settlements with everyone without leaking any information. I think this is a very cool features that in the Web2 doesn't have. And yeah, and then privacy for I think for human it's basic rights, basic human rights, similar to freedom of speech, right? If you don't have it, then you will definitely feel it. But if you're born to have it, you probably wouldn't feel it. So privacy is something. Yeah, it's something like this. So we need this feature in Web3. And it could combine with every other infrastructure and create a better balance between regulation and full decentralization. Yeah.
Thank you, Matt.
Cool, I have a lot of thoughts here, some of bridging off of what everyone said. I guess I'll talk about it in a couple different time horizons as what I'm looking to in terms of anticipation and infrastructure, right? So I think a couple of guys here already touched on, in the short term, we are in a multi-chain world now, right? Even within multi-chain, we have different competing ecosystems, right? We have OP Stack, right? We have the Cosmos ecosystem. And so I think interoperability is definitely a challenge. And what's more challenging, I think, is also the fragmentation of liquidity, right? Because there's so many different changes, capital living all over the place, that has pros and cons. And I think one of the pros is that there's a lot of different experiments, right? Blockchain's almost like this Cambrian explosion of experiments of what works, what doesn't work. But one of those big cons is the fragmented liquidity and the liquidity that needs to be locked up in all these different places to support all these different markets. So I think interoperability, cross-chain stuff, the multi-chain stuff, we need to figure that out. Giving myself another quick plug again, because of all this fragmented liquidity across the board, right? There's a lot of idle capital that's just sitting around on different changes, right? And so there must be a way that capital can be more capital efficient and earn better. And so again, that's why we at Origin are spending a lot of time thinking now about how can you take idle capital, rehypothecate it, earn a steady yield, slightly better than the risk-free yield on, Ethereum staking, but then the entire ecosystem can grow naturally and passively without having to do all this crazy stuff, right? And so that's another big piece of technology that we're personally excited about and we're personally working on. A third piece of technology that we're not spending time in Origin about, but I think is extremely, extremely important, right, is all this stuff around the different flavors of zero-knowledge proofs, right? Because, again, we want consumers to have privacy in terms of their transactions and their other actions on chain, but we need some provability that something has actually happened, right? And so ZK, the different ZK technologies can now then in the future say, hey, this user wants to prove that they've met some accreditation requirement, right? Or they've done, X, Y, and Z things that make them eligible to join this DApp or this DAO or whatever, but you don't actually want those naked transactions to be exposed for everyone else to see. But with zero knowledge rollups and other forms of this, you can actually then be like, okay, we can let this person in, right? Or this person has met certain AML, KYC requirements, but their passport is not uploaded on IPFS for everyone to see and steal, right? And so I think that careful privacy thing is something we need to work on. And then just to end, I'm going to throw out a crazy moonshot thing where I think this will make infrastructure really, really exciting, but it will also dramatically change the world in many, many different ways, and I think also increase global GDP as well as the entire market cap of crypto by like 100x. And that piece of infrastructure is still being built, which is how do we actually connect artificial intelligence to blockchain in a safe and symbiotic way? And right now there are some tensions because artificial intelligence, the largest companies are trying to acquire a bunch of data and keep it closed source because that's a proprietary way that they're going to make money, right? Whoever has the largest, best LLMs is going to have the best access to data and to be able to serve those consumers. However, these companies oftentimes care about specific brands. They're already being regulated. There's already censorship resistance happening on ChatGPT, and God forbid, look at the Chinese ones, right? You're never going to be able to ask them questions about Chinese politics. And so I think we need a way to figure out how to allow the machines to have more open source data and use open source LLMs to trade these alternative AIs, right, that can exist with the commercial AIs. And then the financial rails that we are creating together on blockchain, right, allowing for instant digital transfer of assets, provability across the entire network. I think blockchain ultimately is going to be one of the ways to power the AI evolution. Maybe not in the next couple years where OpenAI, Microsoft, Google, et cetera, are dominating, but in 5, 10, 20 years, we're going to need blockchain and AI to be coming together, and that infrastructure is going to allow for a better, more open, truthful world, right, where any type of data, any different types of use cases can be accomplished by our either AI minions or our AI overlords, but not just be at the control of Google, Microsoft, OpenAI, et cetera. So anyways, that's a moonshot thing I'm anticipating for infrastructure. I don't know how to build it yet, but let's figure it out.
Thank you, Matt. That's a lot to take in, but I think it is an exciting time for a journalist to actually cover the space, right? So we're out of time. So I'd like to thank my panelists for this fruitful discussion. I want to thank the organizer for inviting me to moderate this amazing panel. Please, one more big round of applause for the panelists. Thank you.